You know someone like this. Maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's your own sibling. They go on the same trips, eat at the same restaurants, live through the same milestones as everyone else. But when you check their profile, there is almost nothing there. No vacation photos, no relationship announcements, no mirror selfies, no gym progress pictures, no proud parent posts. Just a blank grid, or an account that has not been touched in years. Our first instinct is to explain this away. Maybe they are shy. Maybe they are hiding something. Maybe they just are not that interesting. But that explanation falls apart the moment you actually get to know one of these people. Many of them are confident. Many of them have full, eventful lives. They are not missing the moments everyone else is posting. They are simply choosing not to turn those moments into content. And that choice is far more psychologically loaded than it looks. To understand why, we need to start with a question most people never ask. What is a social media post actually for? The surface answer is that we post to share memories, to stay in touch, to document our lives. But researchers who study online behavior describe something underneath that surface answer. Decades before social media existed, the sociologist Irving Goffman argued that human beings are constantly performing a version of themselves for whoever is watching. He called it impression management. In face-to-face life, we adjust our tone, our posture, our words, depending on who is in the room. Social media simply moved that performance onto a stage that never closes. Every photo, every caption, every carefully chosen filter is a signal about who we want to be seen as. We are not just sharing a moment, we are curating an identity and hoping the audience approves of it. Most people do this without ever noticing they are doing it. It feels natural, automatic, harmless. But the people who opt out of posting have often noticed it. Somewhere along the way, they became aware of the performance itself, and once you see the strings, it is very hard to keep dancing like a puppet. This is where the first real psychological difference shows up. Researchers studying what is often called lurking behavior, meaning people who consume social media constantly but rarely contribute to it, have found a consistent pattern. A study published in the journal Frontiers in Psychology traced the path that leads someone toward pure observation instead of participation. The researchers found that two internal stressors do most of the work. The first is upward social comparison, the exhausting habit of measuring your body, your house, your relationship, your career against a curated highlight reel of everyone else's life. The second is privacy concern, the quiet unease of knowing that anything you post can be screenshotted, saved, judged, or used against you later. When those two stressors combine with the sheer volume of content flooding a person's feed, the result is a kind of social fatigue. And that fatigue predicts exactly the behavior we are talking about tonight, watching without posting. In other words, silence on social media is rarely about having nothing to say. It is often the nervous system quietly protecting itself from two things at once: comparison and exposure. Let's talk about comparison first, because it explains more than people realize. Every photo you scroll past is not really a photo. It is a highlight, stripped of context, stripped of the bad lighting and the argument that happened 5 minutes before it was taken. Psychologists have long studied what happens when people are repeatedly exposed to these edited slices of other people's lives. The comparisons that follow are not accurate, but they still land emotionally. You are comparing your unfiltered Tuesday to someone else's best possible Saturday, and your brain does not always know the difference. Research out of the University of Pennsylvania found that when people were asked to actively cut down their own social media use, their anxiety and sense of loneliness measurably decreased within just a few weeks. The platforms were not designed maliciously, but the effect on constant posters is often the same: more visibility, more comparison, more emotional cost. People who choose not to post are frequently people who noticed this cost early, sometimes without being able to name it. They stopped feeding the comparison engine, both as consumers and as contributors, because some part of them understood that broadcasting a curated life invites the exact same curated judgment back. Now let's talk about privacy, because this is where a second, quieter motive lives. Not everyone who avoids posting is doing it for emotional self-protection. Some of them are doing simple risk math. Psychologists sometimes call this privacy calculus, the mental cost-benefit analysis people run, often unconsciously, before sharing anything personal. What do I gain from posting this photo? A few likes, a moment of connection, maybe some validation. What do I risk? My employer could see it, a future partner could see it, a stranger could screenshot it, and use it in a way I never intended. For a lot of quiet non-posters, that calculation simply never tips in favor of sharing. It is not paranoia. It is closer to the same instinct that makes you lock your front door even in a safe neighborhood. Not because danger is guaranteed, but because the cost of being wrong once is too high to risk repeatedly. There is a third piece to this puzzle, and it might be the most interesting one. It has to do with something psychologists call self-concept clarity. This is the degree to which a person has a clear, stable, internally consistent sense of who they are, independent of outside feedback. People with high self-concept clarity tend to know their values, their preferences, and their worth without needing a stream of comments to confirm it. And here is the important part. Multiple lines of research on identity and social validation suggest that people low in self-concept clarity are more likely to seek external mirrors, likes, comments, shares, to feel sure of who they are. If your sense of self already feels solid, a public photo does not add much. If your sense of self feels shaky, a public photo can feel like proof that you exist and that you matter. This does not mean every person who posts frequently has an unstable identity, but it does mean that for many quiet non-posters, the absence of posting is not absence of confidence. It is often the opposite, a kind of confidence that does not need an audience to feel real. There is also a simpler, less dramatic explanation running alongside all of this, and it matters just as much. Personality. Introverted, observant people process experience internally before they externalize it, if they externalize it at all. For them, watching a sunset is the entire experience. Turning it into content, choosing the angle, writing the caption, waiting for reactions, can actually interrupt the moment rather than enhance it. These are often the same people who put their phones away at dinner, who can sit through a beautiful view without ever lifting a camera, who would rather have one meaningful conversation than 40 scattered ones. Their attention naturally goes outward toward noticing details in other people, rather than inward toward managing how they themselves are perceived. Ironically, this often makes them better listeners and sharper observers of human behavior than the people who are constantly performing. It is worth pausing here to be fair to the other side of this. Posting is not automatically shallow, and choosing not to post is not automatically enlightened. Plenty of people share their lives online for completely healthy reasons, staying connected with family overseas, building a creative portfolio, documenting a life they are genuinely proud of. The difference we are describing tonight is not posting versus not posting. It is the psychological function behind the choice. Some people post because sharing feels like connection. Some people post because they are quietly seeking proof that they matter. Some people stay quiet because performance genuinely does not interest them. And some people stay quiet because a past experience taught them that visibility can be dangerous. The behavior looks identical from the outside. The internal machinery driving it is completely different. So the next time you notice someone with an empty profile, a person who never seems to post, resist the easy story that something must be wrong with them. Look closer, and you will usually find one of a few things. Someone who has learned that comparison is exhausting and opted out of the race entirely. Someone quietly protecting their privacy in a world that treats oversharing as normal. Someone whose sense of self is already settled and simply does not need public proof of it. Or just someone who would rather live a moment fully than spend it deciding on the best angle to capture it. None of that makes them missing out. In a culture where sharing has become the automatic default, choosing not to share is quietly becoming one of the more deliberate psychological decisions a person can make. Not a smaller life, just a life that does not need an audience to feel like it counts.